All right, this worksheet number 19, we'll look at measures of variation. In the last worksheet, we learned how to calculate different measures of center. We did mean, median, and the mode. We needed to either represent or describe a given data set, right? So we wanted to use one number to describe the whole data set. And sometimes we use measure of center, mean, median, and mode to represent that. Are there other measures that describe different aspects of the given data set? So mean, median, and mode, they give you like center or middle or the representative number. But are there other numbers that we can find that describe different aspects? In this worksheet, we'll investigate measures of variation. So this measure is something different, which tells us how spread out the data is. So it tells you like the distribution or the shape of the data set. All right, let's look at the measure of variation. How spread out is the data set? Measure of variation describes the distribution of data set. Is the data set spread out over a big range of numbers, or is the data set clumped together around the mean? So let's first look at the example. So we have an example of hourly earning of group members from 3 different groups. So let's look at group number A. Group A. Notice there's 15, 15, 15, 15, 15, 15. What? Okay, there's 6 people first of all. It seems like they all earn exactly the same amount, $15. Okay, so that's group number A. Group A. Group B. Whoa, okay, I noticed 3 people are either not working maybe, 0, 0, 0. And then 3 people are making $30 an hour. Okay. So this is very different than Group A. Group A, where everyone was making 15. Group B is more extreme, where half of people are making nothing at all, and half are making a lot of money, 30. Okay, let's look at Group C. I see 10, 10, 15, 15, and 20, 20. So I feel like Group C is somewhere in between Group A and Group B, whereas there are a bunch of 15s, there are a bunch of 10s, there are a bunch of 20s. Nobody's making like very little money, nobody's making a lot of money. So A is like basically everyone makes the same amount. B is like half is super poor, half is super rich, and C is somewhat well distributed in some ways, right? So let's look at part A. Says calculate the mean hourly earning for each group. So group A, basically how do you find the mean? From last section, we basically we add up all the numbers and divide that by 6. Here I kind of know the answer is going to be 15 because every number is 15. So if I did 15, 15. So if you got all 15s, what's the average? Well, average is 15 too. So, but if I have to formally calculate this, it's like this. When you calculate it out, you're going to get 15. Let's scroll up a little bit. How about group B? Same thing. I'll go 0 plus 0 plus 0 plus 30 plus 30 plus 30. I'll divide that by 6. Oh, well, it happened to be 15 also. How about C? Kind of same thing, 10, 10, 15. So this is a little bit of a review of last section. And then you'll divide that by 6. And if you calculate that out, it'll also give you 15. So here I noticed that 3 different groups. If I just calculate the mean, we get all exact same mean. So on average, they all make $15. Group A, on average, they make 15 bucks. Group B, on average, they make $15. Group C, on average, they make $15. But obviously, Group A and Group B are very different in terms of distribution, right? Like income distribution. So I kind of noticed that already. Which group has the highest spread or variation? Earning numbers are spread out over a big range of numbers. So I feel like this will be Group B. They're spread out more, like 0 to 30, so there's a big gap. So another way of think about this, spread out or this is like a gap, like an income gap, right? So this is Group B. So Group B has a bigger gap. Question number C, which group has the least spread or variation, or can also include gap, right? Well, there will be Group A. There's no gap, right? Everyone is making the same amount of money. So Group A, even though they all have the same, so the remark is all 3 groups have the same average, but their distributions are very, very different. Okay. So next topic is how do I actually measure that, the difference of the distribution. So this is what we're going to do. We're going to calculate this thing called standard deviation. Okay. So standard deviation. A standard deviation measures the distance or spread about the mean. A high standard deviation means that the many data values are far from the mean, and then low standard deviation means the many data values are close to the mean. So for example, if you look at our first example here, group A, all the value is 15, so they basically all means, right? So this will have a small standard deviation. But if you look at group B, a lot of data values are far from the mean. Mean was 15, so if you're making 0, you're pretty far away from making $15. Same for 30. If you're making 30, you're pretty far from making $15, right? So group B, numbers are pretty far from the mean, and group A, where the numbers are basically the mean, so they're pretty close to the mean. So let's see here. So how do we actually calculate the standard deviation? The formula is pretty kind of extensive and it's pretty complicated. We're not going to actually deal with this, but fortunately we're going to actually use the Google Sheet to calculate the standard deviation, or we can use Excel. I'm going to post a separate video to how to calculate these, so you'll see that on the page. All right, so how do I actually do that? Here, this is a brief explanation of how you do it on the Google Sheet. So to calculate the sample standard deviation, you're going to select a cell you want to answer to appear. So once you open the spreadsheet, you're going to see a bunch of cells. Just pick one. You're going to type in equal. Notice there's an equal sign, stdev.s. So stdev for standard deviation, .s for sample. Then we'll open parentheses. So once you type this in, then we'll highlight the data set. Basically, then it'll just kind of give you a range of the data set. Then you enter, then it'll just calculate it for you. So for step B, make sure you start with equal sign symbol. So to use the Google Sheet, every time you want to calculate something or use a function, you're going to start with the equal sign. And for step 3, make sure all the data values are selected or highlighted. Usually you round the of the standard deviation to 1 decimal more than how the data set is given. So for example, if I was going to calculate the standard deviation for these guys, these guys here, the numbers are given as a whole number. So once I calculate the answer, I'll usually round to 1 decimal point. All right, so let's go back here. Okay, question number 2, use Google Sheet to calculate standard deviation for each group of A, B, and C. So before we actually do that, if I were to look at, again, the data set, group A has no spread. So I know standard deviation for A is going to be basically 0 because there's a 0 spread. I know that group B will have the highest spread. So it'll have a highest standard deviation. So number for part B is going to be pretty big. Group C has less spread than group B. So standard deviation for group B is going to be, group C is going to be smaller than standard deviation for group B. So I kind of have a estimate of what is going to be. If we actually calculate the answer, group A, you're going to get the standard deviation is going to be 0. Group B, if you calculate it out, your standard deviation is going to be 16.4. And group C, the standard deviation is going to be 4.5. I'm going to have you work on group number 3 yourself. And we'll meet back in number 4. Right, after you're done with number 3, let's look at number 4. Number 4 and 5, concept question. Which group do you think have a higher standard deviation? That means numbers vary more. They're higher range of variation. Explain why. So group A, a collection of weight of quarters in a vending machine, versus group B, a collection of weights of pumpkins in market. So I'm thinking quarters, the size of the quarter doesn't vary that much. They're pretty much all the same size. Whereas pumpkins, they're not necessarily the same size. They're small pumpkins and large pumpkins. So here I can imagine here the weight, the numbers vary more for pumpkins. The numbers, the size, here I'm going to say size, They don't vary as much. Because quarters are pretty much the same size. Whereas pumpkins, there are some small pumpkins, there are big pumpkins. So here again, concept question, I don't have any numbers, but hypothetically speaking, group A will have low standard deviation and group B will have a high standard deviation. All right, I'm going to have you think about number 5 and answer that, and that will be the last question for this worksheet.